Ignoring the heavy rain, about 24 activists lined up at the Peace Garden in Seattle. They were waiting for their turn to read aloud the names of the victims of Soviet purges in the 1930s to 1950s, which claimed about 1 million lives.
Sergei Nikolaevich Tsvetkov, age 68, born in Moscow, a priest in the church of Vishniki village, executed on March 22, 1938, at Butyrka firing range in Moscow.
Dmitry Grigorenko is the returning of the named ceremony organizer in Seattle. He says his great-grandfather was one of those sent to a gulag by the Soviet regime.
And that's the darkest parts of Soviet history that unfortunately have deep connection to the present when the totalitarian regime of Russia reincarnates bad practices, the most terrible practices from the Soviet period.
Katerina Pivovarova's great-grandfather was executed by the Soviet regime in October 1937.
Throughout my childhood, my grandmother and I visited various archives and libraries, searching for information about my great-grandfather, Mikhail Antonovich Pivovarov, who was repressed and executed by shooting.
In Russia, the 17-year-old ceremony has faced growing restrictions in recent years. This year, the government blocked the website where the online ceremony is streamed. Grigorenko says it's crucial to keep the memory alive, even if it's rejected by today's regime.
This event relies on us who are abroad and in safety and can continue the efforts to learn the history, because if lessons of history are not learned, the history repeats.
The attempts to erase historic memory in Russia are not limited to restricting the return of the name ceremony. Journalist Sergei Parkhomenko is one of the initiators of Last Address, a project happening in several cities in Russia that attaches small metal plaques at the last place of residence for victims of Stalin's terror. He says many of these signs are repeatedly vandalized.
These vandals act on their own initiative. They believe their time has come, that they will be commended for it because it aligns with the government's ideology. The current regime in Russia has chosen its side in the history of mass repressions.
As with many other Russian opposition events these days, the ceremony concluded with participants writing letters to current political prisoners in Russia. Natasha Mozgovaya, VOA News, Seattle.